You out there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're covering the Bren 805 by ASG. Now, I've owned this gun for the best part of 10-11 months, so that's really allowed me to get to know the gun, how it works, and most importantly, it's given it a chance to break. If you're new to my reviews, what I like to do is I put timestamps in the video description, so there's a specific section or certain thing you want to find out about the gun, have a look down there and you can probably skip ahead to the part of the video that most interests you. And with that out of the way, we'll dive straight on into the review. Now, the CZ Bren 805 is the end result of a long and storied history where the Czechoslovakians were wanting to replace their post-World War II service rifles, the VZ58, which was essentially their version of the AK-47. However, during the 1980s, obviously the Cold War ended, and the country of Czechoslovakia split into both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. This meant that for the Czech Republic, the numbers of their standing army was massively reduced, they had the budget cut, so they couldn't actually afford the 300,000 replacement service rifles that were planned anyway from the Larder project, which was their project to create their own version of the AK-74. The project got canned, and it wasn't until 2009 that the army was ready to take on a new service rifle. CZ was already waiting in the wings by this point. The Bren had been designed a couple of years before then, they'd been showing off at gun shows, they were just waiting for the army to commit to buying the new rifles. Now, the Bren 805 is chambered for 5.56, however, even though it is part of the NATO standard requirement to fire the 5.56, it doesn't accept M4 Stanag mags, interestingly. This is because of the project's roots in the Larder project, which was designed for the AK-74. The magwell was supposed to take 74 mags. And it turns out it was actually cheaper for CZ to keep the receiver as it was and just make their own proprietary mag that could fire 5.56 rather than replace the entire receiver to accept Stanag mags. This is why the Bren does not accept them as standard. Interestingly, for the real steel and the Airsoft version that ASG do, you can actually buy a replacement receiver that will accept M4s, but the standard one does not. I'd originally bought this gun for £300 from ASP UK. It comes in both the A1 and A2 variants, in both black and tan. The only difference between the A1 and the A2 being the barrel length. The A1 has a full rifle length barrel, the A2 shown here as the shorter carbine variant. So, what else can you expect to turn up once you order an ASG Bren? Short answer is not much, honestly. The Bren's going to turn up in this very nicely presented box here. It's quite sturdy, although I've owned the thing for nearly a year and transporting it to and from sites. I'm starting to get a little bit of wear and tear on the thing now, but it's served me well up until this point. The gun is going to come completely encased in this really quite thick packing foam, and by encased I mean top, bottom, sides, everything. There is no way I can see this thing turning up damaged just because of how much packing material there is here, so very nice job on that. Aside from the Bren itself, you get a single 550 round high capacity magazine and your manual, and other than that, nothing. No little fun goodies, unfortunately. Like, you've ordered a gun, you get the gun, and that's about it. The manual itself is actually very brief, but it gets its point across very well. It's very well presented. It comes in both French and Spanish translations. Very heavy on images, which I certainly prefer over to wordy sort of manuals, just because it's really clear in what it's trying to say. Like, gives you clear indications about how to do things like adjust the cheek rest from the right to the left side, or remove it entirely, like I have. So definitely gets its point across. A bit light on wording, but I don't think it really needs anything else, to be fair. So yeah, aside from your gun, the mag, and this manual, nothing else comes in the box. There's no fun goodies, unfortunately. That seems to be the way ASG rolls these days. So if you're expecting a nice little surprise in the box, afraid not. So, first impressions of the Bren when you pick it up then. First thing you're going to notice is it's really quite sturdy construction. The vast majority of this gun is made from polymer with aluminium metal all over it, and this high capacity mag is plastic, but the polymer has a really quite nice feel to it. It's so sturdy, and because they're using aluminium, it doesn't feel like a toy. However, I'd hardly say that this is a really heavy gun. It feels real due to the weight, but it's not going to affect performance on the field because it's overly heavy. Next point that I noticed when I picked it up is I'm going to need to run a foregrip on this. Mainly because the rails at the front here, the quad rails, they have like a cut that goes down the middle of the rail, just to shave a little bit of weight off, I get that. But what it does is it presents a lot of sharp edges on the rails here. Now, I've never like cut my hand on it or anything, but it just means that holding it for a certain length of time can be quite uncomfortable, so first thing I got after buying this gun was a foregrip. Other than that though, it's really quite good first impressions. It shoulders quite nicely. I do wish they'd have taken a little deviation from a direct replica in one particular aspect, however, because obviously they've just gone for the whole thing. This is what the gun, the real steel one's like. But I think just adding like a little rubberized texture on the back of the pistol grip and on the stock certainly would definitely improve performance a little bit, because it's whilst it's quite a hard and sturdy finish for this polymer, it is quite slippy. So you can find on like a rainy day particularly, it will just start to slip around in your shoulder. It's not really that secure as it could be, but obviously they're going for realism to the real steel, and that's where you get to the end result. So ultimately, first impressions then are really quite good. As I say, gloves or foregrip, I think you'll probably want to run those. You don't need to, but it's definitely something you'll want to use, I think. So good first impressions overall, I think, though. It's definitely true to what the real steel version is like. So let's go over some of the features of the gun, starting right at the back with the adjustable stock, and we instantly run into my first problem with the gun. Now, as the months have gone on, the actual lever that you use to adjust the stock has become stiffer and stiffer, and it's now at the point where it can't actually lift the pin high enough to allow the stock to be adjusted, so it is stuck in this smaller setting for me at the moment, which obviously is annoying, but I actually prefer it on the shorter settings. Not deal breaker for me, but for someone else that can become really quite annoying. The stock has other modes of adjustability, however. There is a button just here which you can use to fold the stock away entirely. Now it's a little bit stiff because lack of use mostly. I don't tend to run my stocks folded, but it locks it in place with a very nice securing click just there. So mainly for transport and storage really. Nice to have that regardless though. If, however, you want to run this gun with the stock removed entirely, there is a button on the top of it just here. When you press that, it allows the stock to come down, but however, it will keep the battery space covered, so you can actually use this gun without the stock entirely. You can run it stockless if you want. This pin just here is what actually secures the thing on and exposes the battery space. So if you pop that out just there, and you pull the stock down, that will expose the battery space. Now, the battery space in this gun is really small. I actually run it on this twin stick 7.4 volt LiPo battery just here, and it only just goes in. It's a really tight fit. I do struggle some days to actually get the battery in because the space is so small. What I think it's doing is there's a little bit of metal behind the bolt just here on the inside of it, and I think it's catching on that, and it's actually starting to fray the edges of my battery because it's just rubbing against that metal. So if you are going to run this gun, I'd suggest a slightly smaller battery than that, but yeah, so definitely not really a fan of the battery space, unfortunately. It is a tight fit in there. Moving forward, we have the ambidextrous fire selector, and my next biggest problem with the gun, unfortunately. The fire selector, it makes the gun like to think it's in a mode one higher than it is sometimes. So if you put it on safe, if you pull the trigger, very occasionally it might actually fire. If you put it on semi, sometimes it'll fire burst. And if you put it on full auto, sometimes the trigger will just run away entirely, the gun will just fire automatic non-stop until you pull the mag out. And this has happened to me on multiple occasions, maybe once a day, to be honest. It's quite a common occurrence, which is why I just tend to run the gun on semi. It happens that often.
Oh yeah, I see him. He's down, he's down. Oh, fucking hell.
Fucking hell, man. All the way through this.
Yeah, no right.
He's down.
Yeah, the sniper is. Still the one on the right.
So moving on from the trigger, we have the ambidextrous mag release located just here. I've had zero problems with this mag or the release. I'm actually really quite appreciative of both the high capacity of this mag, 550 rounds, and the fact that the trapdoor for loading it is ridiculously huge. This thing is easily twice the width of the one you might find on an M4 mag, so it just makes loading it hassle-free, and so definitely a fan of that. On the top, you have two flip-up iron sights, which can be both folded down and are spring-loaded, so you just press the button on the side and that will flip it up like so. They are removable entirely as well, so if you don't like them, you can just take them off the gun and run a scope on it, which is what I've been doing personally. I think the sight picture they provide is a bit too obscured. There's a bit too much going on these iron sights. They're a bit too chunky, so you can't really get good target definition, so that's why I personally remove them myself, but nice that they're there, definitely. Moving forward again, we have the flash hider just here, which can be unscrewed, and it does expose a thread, which allows you to put aftermarket suppressors on, and you have a grand total of 4 sling mount points, 2 at the rear just here, 2 at the front, and finally the bolt charging handle just here can be actually removed and put onto the other side if you'd like. There are instructions in the manual how to do that, but once you pull it back, it will expose the hop-up units located just here. Now it's a rotary dial kind of thing, and it's really quite stiff. This means that it's not going to change settings mid-game. It tends to stay in there. It's a little bit too stiff to adjust, so you really have to get your nail in there to make the fine, precise adjustments, but it will actually stake in place once you have done so. So, aside from the fire selector issue, I have had no reliability problems with this gun. There was one instance where I was trying to run it on .3s, and they would actually jam in the barrel. However, I think this is more due to a bad batch of BBs than anything else, because I've tried months later to replicate the issue, and I've not been able to. So I think I just had a bad bottle in that instance that caused that. So those aside, the gun has been extremely reliable for me, to be frank. Once one of my other guns goes down, this is my next go-to. This goes to every single game with me, because if I'm using another gun and I suspect it might go down at some point, it's nice to know that I've got the Bren to rely on just as a fallback. So very much a reliable workhorse for me, this gun. Obviously the fire selector is a problem, and I don't know what is with me. I always tend to have fire selector problems with my guns. I'm cursed in that regard, unfortunately, but I've not actually heard any other grumblings from Bren owners about the fire selector, so I might have a one-off problem with this one, but still, it wouldn't have been a review if I didn't mention it, so take that as you will. So, when I was last up at the jail in Leicester, I managed to get a shooting test done with this gun. The test was taken at 30 metre distance. I was using 0.25 gram BBs, and I was lying prone to try and make the shot as stable as possible. So as can be seen from the target of that, a lot of the shots did actually manage to connect with it. I certainly wouldn't say it's laser beam accurate. I mean, name me an airsoft gun that is, but it's certainly serviceable whilst nothing to write home about. And this does actually reflect my opinion of it during games as well. I tend to find that it's never been accurate enough to warrant using it as like a DMR sort of thing, but send a quick burst down range and you're almost guaranteed to take your target down. So whilst not pinpoint accurate, it is definitely serviceable in that regard. While I was at the jail, I actually forgot to get it chronoed, unfortunately, so when I was next to MCG about 2 weeks later, I got it chronoed then. That was tested on 0.2 gram BBs, and I kind of noticed during the test that it was hard to read the screen of the chrono on the camera, so I just decided to say the results out loud as well.
Oh.
Yep.
319, 316, 312, 327, 303, 308, 312.
So as can be seen from the chrono test, the gun's averaging somewhere around the 308, 312 mark with a little bit of variance in between, but this is definitely well under the 350 max that you get in the UK, so this gun is perfectly viable to use to CQB sites. There's no way you're going to turn up to a CQB site, and even if their chrono is a little bit off, you are going to pass every chrono test on that with the standard spring. If you do want to replace the spring, maybe get a bit more power on it, there is a quick release system in this as well, so it's very easy to change out the spring if you want a more powerful one. However, I'm personally quite happy with the one that's installed in there. It allows me to do everything, and I've never felt like there was a lacking power. So I've never felt the need to upgrade the spring on this gun. I'm quite happy with it as it is, to be fair. So where do you want to be on the airsoft field to get the absolute most out of the Bren? Now, in my head, the answer to that is anywhere and everywhere, to be fair. Like, this gun is usable in almost every single situation. Granted, it's going to be in certain situations, like you might get outranged by a sniper, or maybe that guy with the CQB gun's a little bit more manoeuvrable indoors, but I have never found myself in a situation where the Bren couldn't compete, and where a situation where it wasn't usable. It was always usable, it was always on point. Like, moving through indoors, for example, this only applies if you have the A2 variant like I do. If you have the A1, the barrel's a bit longer, and I don't think it's going to give you that much of an improvement, so stick with the A2 in my eyes. But I've taken this indoors, I've taken this outdoors, I've had it running against snipers, I've had it running against 30 rounds a second CQB machines. It has always been competitive. I've never found myself on a site or in a situation and just thought to myself, oh God, I really wish I had another gun instead of this. No, the Bren does the job. This is, by its very definition, is the definitive standard assault rifle, and I'm A-okay with it that this is just your standard go-to workhorse, and it should be treated as such. So ultimately then, would I recommend buying the ASG Bren 805? Now, if when I'd spoken to other Bren users, they'd have reported the same fire selector problem, this would have been a no. However, all the other users I've spoken to, they've not said anything about it. They say that they don't have that issue. So I'm absolutely convinced that this is just an issue localized to my gun. So with that in mind, yes, I can recommend the Bren to people. It is such a solid package. Like, I'm really happy with the general performance of it. The reliability is top notch. This gun goes with me to every single game, whether I'm going to an outdoor site, CQB, massive milsim, whatever. This gun goes everywhere. Just because I know it's reliable, I know I can fall back onto it if something else goes down, and it can do it. It can compete in every single situation. Like, yes, it's not specialised in anything, but it can do everything. So take it to indoor size, take it to outdoor size. It doesn't matter. The gun will compete. Yes. Shame about the stock being locked in one position. Like, I don't know why it's doing that. Maybe a little bit of modding would allow you to lift the pin out a little bit higher. Yes, the battery space is small. This is really quite annoying on some game days where I'm stuck for about 10 minutes trying to get the battery in. But those aside, it's just been such a good package. And for £300, this is like your premium airsoft gun, but still kind of affordable sort of level. It's very competitive in that regard. And the visuals make it just a little bit different from the standard M4 crowd, which just makes it stand out and catches my eye a little bit, and I love this gun, I really do, so I have no problems recommending the ASG Bren to anyone. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed my video review of the ASG Bren 805 A2. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me, feedback you'd like to give on the video, maybe you own one of these and you'd like to share your own experiences or maybe your own problems. Are you suffering with the same problems as mine? Let us know in the comments section. And until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.